Before we start, if you enjoy crazy Reddit stories like this one, make sure to subscribe and drop a like. All right, let's get into the story. So this happened about 2 years ago when I was working at a small marketing company in Chicago. The job itself wasn't terrible, the pay was decent, the co-workers were cool, but the boss? Yeah. He was one of those people who thought running a company meant acting like a dictator. His name was Greg. Greg had this obsession with punctuality. And I don't mean the normal be on time for work kind. I mean military-level punctuality. If you were even 1 minute late, he would call you into his office and lecture you for 20 minutes about professionalism. Most of us just learned to deal with it. Until one morning, when everything went wrong. That day, there had been a massive accident on the highway. Traffic was completely stopped. I left my apartment at the same time as always, but the entire road was backed up for miles. I even texted my boss to explain. I said, "Hey Greg, there's a huge accident on the highway. I might be a few minutes late." No response. So I kept driving and finally arrived at work. 5 minutes late. Not 15, not 30. 5. The moment I walked into the office, Greg was already standing there, waiting, like he had been watching the clock. He looked at me and said, "So nice of you to join us today." I explained the situation. I told him about the accident, and instead of understanding, he just smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind of smile that tells you someone is about to ruin your day. He said, "Well, unfortunately, we have a policy here." Then he pulled out a paper from his desk. It was a termination notice. He had already prepared it for being 5 minutes late. I honestly thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. He made me pack my things and leave immediately. Just like that. 2 years of work gone in 5 minutes. At first I was furious, but a week later, something interesting happened. One of my old co-workers called me, and he sounded very excited. He said, "Dude, you won't believe what just happened to Greg." Apparently, Greg had been doing something incredibly stupid and incredibly illegal. You see, Greg had been forcing employees to work unpaid overtime. Sometimes we stayed an extra hour or two finishing projects, but those hours were never recorded. At the time, we didn't question it too much. We just thought that was how the company worked. But after I got fired, one of my coworkers decided he had enough, and he reported the company to the Department of Labor. What happened next was absolute chaos. The company got audited. Investigators started checking everything: work schedules, emails, employee testimonies. And guess what they found? Years of unpaid overtime from almost every employee. Greg tried to deny everything, but there was too much evidence: messages, project deadlines, late-night emails. The investigators realized employees had worked thousands of unpaid hours. And that's when the real consequences started. The company was ordered to pay massive fines, but that wasn't all. They also had to pay back wages to every employee who had worked overtime, including me, even though I had already been fired. A few weeks later, I received a letter. Inside was a check for almost $8,000. Apparently, that was the total value of all the unpaid overtime I had worked over 2 years. I couldn't believe it. Getting fired ended up making me thousands of dollars. But Greg's problems were just starting. Because once the investigation finished, clients started hearing about it. And companies don't like working with businesses involved in labor violations. Within a few months, several major clients canceled their contracts. Revenue dropped fast, and eventually, the company shut down. So the boss who fired me for being 5 minutes late ended up losing his entire business. all because he tried to control every little thing and treated employees like machines instead of people. The funniest part? About 6 months later, I found a new job. Better pay, better co-workers, and most importantly, a boss who actually understands that sometimes traffic happens. So yeah, getting fired that day felt terrible. But looking back now, it might have been the best thing that ever happened to me. And that's the story. But I'm curious, what would you have done in this situation? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more crazy Reddit stories like this one, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.